Three, two, one. Hi, and welcome to yet another expat. This is episode 16. How are you doing? If you live in Europe, I hope that you are doing as good as possible. When I started this podcast, I thought the title is, a funny one. Yet another expat, making a little bit fun of the term. And I don't know, I had a light sense in my mind, like didn't put a heavy meaning in it. Looking at the election results in EU that happened right now, I wonder if this podcast name is what makes them find me when the purge starts or whatever it is that the far right wants to do. But I'm recording this from Greece, and you know that what? Here I am not the expat, here I am the OG. So perhaps I should start shouting for some Germans to leave the country. There are so many of them having vacations here just to balance it out for when I get shouted in Germany to leave the country. This has been my recent fear looking at the far right numbers in the EU elections. But let's see. We see as we go. Weird way to intro, I know, but this is happening right now. And by the way, someone wrote me in a comment on the episode about AI and Google. He said, "Hey, I tried this out 2 minutes after I dropped. This is too big of an intro for a podcast. You need to think of the new people." So, hello, new people. I am thinking of you. I don't know how many you are, but this is a podcast by me, your host, Hermes. In this podcast, we have a take around life's occurrences and we find some news that are worthy enough to bring in a party, some cool wiki, a little bit of observational stuff, and a little bit of my personal stories and drama. So, to make this podcast have a little bit of a rebrand, I'm actually starting an Instagram channel for the podcast. This is where you can find. Do you know I'm making an artwork for every episode? I'm making a pretty bad Photoshop for every episode, but these don't have a home. And I also thought I'll go all in. My editing software gives me the opportunity to do some shorts, pick a few phrases, and make a small video with the text below. And I thought, I'm going all in. So, to the old people and the new people and all the people, this podcast has an Instagram channel now. It's called Yet Another Expat. You can look at it just like that. Please give me a follow. This will enable me to push it out even more. And I'm making a TikTok channel because, I'm going all in. I'm taking the full deal. Do I feel weird in my age engaging with TikTok? Absolutely. I'm signing the paper for the Chinese people to come steal my data. I don't care. So be it. Maybe it's better with the Chinese having my data and the EU having my vote. Okay, that was too far. I know. So I'm doing this rebrand, new Instagram channel, new TikTok. Follow, subscribe. You can share it with your friends. I can throw some money on it now and see where it goes. But as I'm talking about the podcast and its past and its future, and I'm sorry, my YouTube commenter friend, for making this intro too long, but I do think that it's finally time to give a few shout outs to some of the listeners of this podcast. And to you, my unknown YouTube commenter friend, Organic723, you made a comment. You are now in the podcast. You don't know about it. So the podcast has been slowly growing. I love seeing the different geographic locations that you are all coming from. At the moment, we have Germany and Greece, of course, being in the top two. But then the US is coming in third. And I don't think I know anyone from the US who is listening to this podcast. So, hello, US. Lovely to have you. Glad you're finding things interesting and staying along. Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands follow with Romania, Taiwan, Australia, France, Iceland, South Korea, Egypt, China, and Japan. So the Chinese are actually listening to this podcast. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to TikTok. I'm signing all the papers. Open your arms. I will do a trust fall where I close my eyes and I come in your arms. I want to be famous in TikTok in a night and then live with the stress of delivering these mediocre episodes. And with the danger of making this intro way too long for someone like my dear YouTube commenter, Organic723 is his username. I will keep this intro long because I want to give a shout out to some loyal followers of this glorious podcast who have stayed through the tides, who message me when I'm missing an episode. Yo, where is the episode? What is happening? Who are always there to share a word. The first one actually is from China. Surprise, surprise. It's Rigatos, my dear friend. The most Costas Rigatos. I doxed you. I gave your full name. The most loyal listener lives in China. I think he is giving a lot of battles with his VPN to surpass the censorship and get into the essence of knowledge that this podcast is. Always sends me some feedback, and the best thing is that because of the time zone difference, he's always the first one to listen to this episode. Now, Kostas is a theoretical physicist doing some crazy research, and if there is hope that a black hole sucks us all one day, it might be Kostas who created. So thank you, Kostas, for trying to unlock the secrets of the universe, the quarks, the string theories, and it all. And when you want something a little bit more challenging, a little bit more deep, then you come and listen to this podcast. Lots of love. My second shout out goes to Cherie. Cherie is a top listener. I think she was the reason for bringing this podcast on Apple Podcasts in the first place. My favorite thing about her is that she quotes things from the podcasts, like she remembers content from it and brings it forward or shares articles with me some weeks after I shared something and says, "Hey, here's this relevant thing to what you said." And it really makes me feel seen. Thank you very much, Suri. We literally once we were out together and she brought a topic that she found interesting, and she couldn't remember where she got it from, and it was literally a point that I had brought in the podcast. So that made a full circle. I have to say that was the first orgasmic moment of the podcast in a very, very, very non-sexual way. So thank you, Cherie. Congratulations on your Instagram detox. This is something else that is happening, trying to reset the dopamine level. She's on it. She is doing it. She is loving it. We're proud of you. And yes, I hope you have your notifications on to listen to this podcast because you're not going to see my Instagram reminder. So, do you want to be one of the top listeners of this podcast? Do you want to make it in this list that I'm bringing forward? It's in your hand, dear listener. The list is small, but my love is huge. The last shout out actually goes to Louise. Louise is usually messaging me a quote from the podcast with different emojis. Like it's really good to pick, I guess, the favorite quote. If I could have a team bringing the good stuff, bringing them out there, creating some content on the platforms like TikTok, Louise would be one of them. She's amazing. She hikes a lot and not always in the best places, but she always has the best time. Thank you, Louise. And let's get going. This was it. This was the huge intro. I am starting this podcast with some things I want to bring you. Okay, the first thing I want to bring is again about AI. I know AI is everywhere, but hear me out. There is this thing, if you haven't noticed, we said a few episodes ago that AI loves to be trained now. It doesn't just want to train off the entire internet, it's looking for good data sets to get trained on. We said how the Google overview, the AI decided to get trained from the Reddit data, and that caused the chaos, wrong results, getting all the troll answers, thinking they're good ones, and all of that. So let's put that aside. But Google Overview is not the only AI who wants to be trained, and Google made a deal with Reddit about this, but You don't always need to make a deal, right? You can just sneak something in some terms and conditions that no one reads, and then you can actually get all the data without having to go through the trouble of asking about it. Well, this is what is happening with Meta, the glorious company that owns Instagram and Facebook, the child of Mark Zuckerberg, the reptilian AI android that is ruling the world. So apparently, there was a terms and conditions update where we all gave consent that Meta can use our face or any art that we post on our socials to train AI into making generated images without us knowing it. Okay. If you haven't seen this, this is real. I have double checked. If you are surprised, well, I have news for you. I think these things will be happening all the freaking time. They didn't highlight it very much, but if you are based in the EU or the UK, you can opt out. For those who are not, I literally don't know what you can do. So I'll make this quick for the EU and UK people, but if you go in your settings, and this works from both Instagram and Facebook because it will lead you to your Meta account, which is the umbrella, the parent. I did it from Instagram. If you go to settings and then you go on about, and then you go on the privacy policy, hmm, then you will find something called the right to object. Sounds really good. Also, the settings can get so complicated on Instagram, so many menus and submenus, not always in favor of the user. So you can actually search your settings. So you can search, you go settings, about, privacy policy, and then right to object. And you click that, and you need to write a very short email. You put your country and your email, and you can say that I request to exclude my data, including posts and photos and messages from any future AI training. And you need to make this nice and clear. Then they send you a security number in your email, and then that's it. You send a response. And I know that this sounds weird with all the spam, share this photo to 100 people before 5 o'clock, or else this happens, or these boomer images on Facebook that say, Dear Zuckerberg, I will not pay for the platform ever, and you cannot do XYZ. But this is proper legal stuff. The right to object is there from GDPR, and they are obliged to read it, accept it, and respond in specific times as well. They cannot ignore these types of requests. So this is how you can ask to get out of it. But it seems like Instagram and Facebook are not the only ones jumping exactly on these terms and uses sneaking in their AI training through your face, through your photos, through your art. Imagine someone typing tired Greek on a Sunday night with a relatively big nose and declining hairline. Enter, and then it puts a photo of me because it's been trained from datasets that have my photos. Now, you wouldn't want that. But it's not just Facebook and Instagram that want to take all of our stuff and train the AI. You know what? I know that it's annoying, but if they are to use our content, they should at least pay us. Our data has so much value, and it's crazy to me how much we have to fight for that right now. I really think that this will all be things of the past in some years. Things are getting better, but at the same time, they're getting worse because something like this, two checkboxes, and then entire neural networks can have all of your things floating by in seconds. But anyway, second in the list is Adobe. You know, Adobe that has Photoshop, After Effects, all of this software to create basically everything. Well, just when you thought that it couldn't get any worse with big corporations and AI theft, especially against artists, it's Adobe that also announced that they want to steal your work. But unlike social media, they want to say that because they are a cloud based company, now they own the right to use your work to train their AI models. I am a Photoshop user myself, and when Photoshop started asking me, hey, save your things in the cloud, it's so much easier. You can access it from anywhere, anytime. It's just here. Why look on your desktop every time? Just leave it here and we'll bring it to you. I said, yes, I have a lot of my things in the cloud. So Long story short on this one, watch out. Everyone now has an AI and everyone wants to train it. And the way to train it is through us. The data is already there. We produce data all the time. We produce content all the time. So now they want to have it. And I say, the only ones that get my content for free are my listeners. You hear that, AI? Don't take my voice. This voice is mine. Now that I say this, I'm jumping, but now that I say this, the software I'm using to record these podcasts literally has an AI tool that can synthesize my voice. It can synthesize your voice back, and then you can use it to do your commercials or to do your intros or your outros. And of course, I'm not paying enough money to enable this, but yes, apparently my voice will also be stolen. One day I'll accept something, and next thing I know, there is an AI making this entire podcast, probably with better intros, shorter ones, for my friend Organic723. So fuck Adobe, opt out from Meta, and wait for the next one. On a second piece of quick news, I talked about microplastics last week. I promise I will never talk about microplastics again. They're everywhere in our bowls, in our eyes, in our brains, in our heads. However, I want to talk to you about plastics, okay? It's not the micro ones, it's the normal ones. Because you know how these entire islands exist in the Pacific, which is basically plastic that has been moved around from the different currents until it becomes a huge mass and it's just floating there, getting boiled by the sun, decomposing. Well, apparently, in one of these, scientists have found an ocean borne fungus that can eat through plastic trash. And they found it exactly in one of these mega sized garbage patches in the Pacific Ocean. So, this fungus, it has a name. It's named Parengiodontium. Parengiodontium album. I couldn't read this and I'm even Greek. This fungus can actually break down polyethylene that has been exposed to UV lighting, like the one that a plastic would get exposed if it's floating in the sea forever. So, yes, a new fungus is on the block. And if you expose the plastic, the polyethylene, to UV lighting, then it can eat it. And polyethylene is the most pervasive form of plastic waste in our oceans. So, although this is something, it doesn't mean we should keep throwing keep throwing everything. And it's not doing it really fast enough. It breaks it down really, really slowly. But however, it's a reminder of two things. One, how impressive the world's species are, how nature always finds a way and is the real MVP. We're just a sidekick. And for me, it also reminds me that we talk about the planet destruction and the climate change and all of that. And I think we fail to realize that we are destroying the planet, but the planet doesn't give a fuck. The planet will make it through. We fill it with plastic, a fungi will eat it, and the fungi will become methane and die, and then the cycle will continue. We are fighting ourselves. So I kind of like this more egoistic point of view. I think maybe it could work with more people instead of thinking the poor pandas and the giraffes in the zoos and the dolphins in the seas and all of that. I mean, yes, it's sad, but life on Earth will not have a problem. It survived through the meteors and the dinosaurs and whatever it is that caused all that. It will survive through everything. It has been through countless ice ages. Everything freezes up, then slowly melts, and then things go on again. It's not the planet that will have a problem, it's us. Now, I know you know this, so bottom line is when everything feels dark, when everything feels futile, just remember that somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in an island that's made entirely out of plastic garbage that's rotting and UV exposing and melting, there is a tiny fungus, Parengotium album, that is slowly eating away, one bite at a time, our problems away. Last thing to share, and I know that this was a weird podcast, too big of an intro, a bit confusing. Exactly when this one user told me your intros are huge, I dropped out. I came with this uneven podcast, but it is what it is. A small observation I want to share and wrap it up is that I recently went to a bookstore with my partner to buy a book for her godchild. And that godchild is becoming one. So we were in the very, very kids section. And I haven't been there in some time, but I remember the books I had when I was young. I remember the books my brother had when he was young. He's 25 now. And I got to experience the kids' books in the bookstores, and specifically the ones from 1 to 4 years old. And I was blown away. What's up with that? What I mean is that I have never seen more interactive stuff. The book is supposed to be something with pages and text, or so I thought. And I've seen these books that maybe they have a button and you hear the cow go moo and the dog go woof woof and all of this. Okay, I've seen that. Or a book that has a few instruments that you push a button, you hear a sound. But I think the situation is out of place. I think the books got cornered so much because of all the phones that are around, and they had to compete. They had to compete with a phone that can give you content non-stop. So actually, they have created these kids' books that they're full on sensory. You can hear everything, you touch on different sides, you can pull things, you pull something and something changes, you push something in the page, and there's motion. Um, you start spinning things, and the entire animation changes. It was so advanced. I was trying to think who came up with this, who came up with something so interactive. And let me tell you my favorite one. There was one that had a lot of different animals. Big deal. Most of them have animals. So this one had the you could touch the animal. It had the texture stitched, so you can touch it. So you start with a dog, and then there is a beautifully painted dog, and there is some hair coming out of the book, and you can touch that. It's like a piece of cloth, and you're like, okay, okay, I'm petting a dog, and then on the next page it had a sheep, and different type of texture, again quite woolly. You're like, I'm patting the sheep now, and then in the next one it had an elephant, and the part that was cut off so you touch the material had some sort of disgusting plastic, a plastic with texture. And then I realized, ew, okay, I guess this might be an elephant skin, kind of dry and plasticity. Yeah, there was nothing nice about it. And then you move on, and then there is a lion, and you can pet the lion, and I'm starting thinking, okay, how realistic is this book? What are you teaching to a child here? And it's going to see a lion and go give it a pat in the head. And then in the next one it had a butterfly, but I think at this point they had run out of ideas. Okay, they had this idea to put a bit of fabric, so they could create all the woolly animals. They tried with a dog, they tried with a sheep, and then they said we need to spin it. They tried with a lion, and this is where you can't just keep adding a woolly fabric and calling it an animal. So someone said, I have an idea, let's put some plastic and then name it, I don't know, a hippopotamus or an elephant. I mean, the skin is something like that, right? And the next one was a turtle. And in the turtle, they just used the book page, no extra material. It was just very hard paper with the shapes in the back. And then I think they just gave up because the next one was a butterfly. And in the butterfly, instead of texture, they had just put a very shiny page. So it was purple and the light could reflect on it. But if you touched it, like it was just a page. Somehow the whole promise of the texture had faded out. But anyway, this was just one of the books. I'm telling you, it was insane. You could change the weather in reading a story and moving things around, and the patterns would change, and the characters would move and catch things, and they would have sounds. They would have motion, they would have graphics, they would have texture. I never thought that the research and development department of the kids' publishing company would be so lively. So much entrepreneurship going in there. So next time you're in a bookstore, check out the kids section, even if you don't have one, and go the smaller age, the better. Because this is when kids they don't want to read. They just grab things with their hands and they want it to do something. They will throw it around if it doesn't do something interesting enough. So that's an interesting constraint to have when you are telling a story. And with this, I think I will wrap it up. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you stay safe wherever you are, home country or different country. I know if you are anywhere in the EU, the feeling is not great at the moment, which is one more reason to seek things that have meaning, to bring solidarity, to bring your friends closer, to be more open, to be more intentional, to be more friendly, and to be an ally. We are all in this together, and until we find a fungus that can help us get rid of all of our problems, we need to keep surfing the waves and dancing in the rain. Thank you for joining. See you next week. Ciao.